Mr. X.
Hello, man. Good morning, citizens. We are here again with my friend Frank from the good old US of A. And I'd like everyone to sort of give him a big thank you for getting up at 7 a.m. on a Sunday morning, because I don't have to be here until noon, of course. So, and he's looking pretty bright-eyed and bushy-tailed for someone at 7 a.m. on a Sunday morning. So, anyway, mate, how have you been?
Not too bad, not too bad. And the getting up early thing, this is sleeping in for me.
Oh, okay.
I'm usually rolling out of bed at 3:15, having to be at work at 4. So this is sleeping in for me.
Okay, so next time we can start at 9 here, and then it'll be 3 in the morning or whatever it is.
Yeah, don't push your luck now, sir. Oh, Lord.
Anyway, I do appreciate it. So there's quite a lot been happening in the last couple of days. This morning, I noticed that I don't know. This is only just happened, but there's reports that British fighter planes are being deployed from Cyprus, supposedly to assist the Israelis.
Right.
Yeah. Now, I don't know the truth of this or whatever. I mean, one of the things that I find strange about this, apart from anything else, is the idea that Israel might need our help. You know, I mean, I thought that the Israelis were all powerful and didn't need anybody's help, and particularly not, the perfidious British. Certainly with our sort of puny military these days. So. I found myself in a slightly what would you say, not on the side of the consensus, particularly with regard to Israel. I don't know where you are on this, but there seems to be an awful lot of people who've come down hard against Israel, and I'm no particular fan of Israel. I mean, Israel's not really it's an especially friendly country to us at all, but I haven't come down hard against them, but I certainly don't think we should be assisting them in whatever they're doing. But I don't know what you think about that.
Yeah. At one point, 10, 15 years ago, I was a big supporter of Israel, and I bought the narrative that what was good for Israel was good for America. I've had a number of Jewish friends all the way from school, all the way going back to high school. And I had bought I believe it's the neocon narrative that, Israel and America, that Israel is the only Western democracy in the Middle East, and we need allies there, yada, yada, yada. Well, over the years, I've finally learned that Israel does what it wants to, and damn everybody else. They have a great PR firm here in America, and but myself and I'm to other people's credits. Many other people around here are starting to come to the realization that that Israel is not one of the good guys. Now I should say, I need to put this caveat out. We're talking about the Israeli government and the elites and those at the levers of power. When it comes to the general population of Israel, my heart goes out to them. And what happened on October 7th was awful. But when I rail on Israel as a nation, I'm talking about the elites. I'm talking about those in power, and those people could not care less about America or Britain or any other country. They care about looking good and getting their way on whatever it takes.
I think there's I think there's what you're saying actually is it could that could apply to all of our states. You know, this is confusing with the United States, but you know what I mean. The machinery
States,
of
yeah.
the state. You know,
Yeah,
the
states with a
establishment.
big S, not small
Yeah,
s. Right.
yeah, exactly. So, you know, I mean, I despise the British state. Yeah. I love the country.
Yeah.
You know, I love the country. It's my home, but I despise the state. And as far as I'm concerned, the state is the enemy of the rest of us. I
Thank
get
you.
the feeling that's probably how you feel about the United States state.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. In fact, on Twitter, I refuse to call it X. On Twitter, I this morning I posted the old meme about our enemies are not in Tehran. Our enemies are right here in
Yeah.
D.C. in our state capitals, and the elites at the levers of power. Those are our real enemy. The media's are 90% of the media is against us. Us being working class people that are just trying to make a living, you know, that are just trying to make it day by day. So yes, this and that's and we I don't want to go off on too much of a tangent, but that also explains my deep-seated want for a national divorce. I don't want people that hate me to be able to affect my life directly.
Right.
You know? So
I didn't realize you were quite that. I didn't realize you were quite that far down the road, actually. But
well, I've been wanting it for quite some time. It's just been very encouraging to hear any kind of talk of it. The last two or 3 years, there's been increasing more and more talk of it. The state of Texas has actually put it to a vote in their state government. I'm not sure what's come of that. The elites in Texas have been trying to keep it off of ballots and off of I should know the terms for this, off of out of the governmental agenda to even talk about it. But the Texit instead of Brexit, it's a Texit movement in Texas, has been growing and gaining momentum, which is encouraging, especially in the light of the millions of illegal aliens coming across the Texas border. So, you know, as if those in power didn't think there would be any kind of outrage or pushback from it. So, and like I said, they don't care. They don't care that. You know, they sit there, they sit in their ivory towers and they push the little buttons and they do all this, and they don't care about the repercussions because they know that they've got insider trading, and their little nest egg and their little bunkers are set. So damn the rest of them. You know, we're going to do this anyway.
Yeah, I think I saw a meme the other day said that the politicians, they can't balance the budget, and yet they all become millionaires.
Yep.
You know.
Yeah. I wonder how that happens. It's almost as if they're in collusion with banks and the media and everybody else. So.
Yeah. You know, as far as Texans go, I've never met a Texan. I've never once met a Texan who hasn't told me quite early on that Texas was once an independent country.
Right. Yeah, we may be overly proud of that, but I mean, so is Louisiana. The Louisianians, people from Louisiana, that's a whole different creature compared to Texas. And like I said, I was born and raised there, and moved away for other reasons. 14 years ago, 14 years ago. I still have lots of family in Texas, and I still love my state of Texas. I still watch my baseball team. World Series.
Oh yeah.
Pennant right there because they won the World Series. Very proud of them. Anyway,
what team is that?
The Texas Rangers.
Oh, okay, right.
And I've got. Excuse me. Yes, my Rangers. So.
Okay.
so yes, I still have ties to Texas, and I'm very proud of them. The thing holding them back is the large cities of Houston, Dallas, Fort Worth, Austin. It's the large cities are very blue, are very Democrat, are very progressive, and they're holding back the rest of the, that 10% of the population is holding back the other 90% when it comes to common sense legislation and just having government mind their own damn business, pretty much. So
yeah. Well, yeah. So I suppose if you had the national divorce, I mean, would it go along the Mason-Dixon line? Where does the Mason-Dixon line? Where is that? Is that between North Carolina and above, or what?
Yeah. At one time I did know this. It ran because Virginia, I believe, was still considered north, I think. So yeah, it would be the Virginia, North Carolina border, Tennessee, was Kentucky. See, that's where it gets when you cut through the Appalachia. That's where it gets a little dicey because I forgive me those from Tennessee and Kentucky, but it's kind of I've always equated those 1A and 1B. Somewhere through Kentucky or probably over Kentucky, all the way across to Oklahoma, then cuts down to Texas. So yeah, with Missouri was geographically north, but they still withheld their rights to own slaves or something like that. No, it's not going to break down like that because North Carolina is pretty blue, and things and the demographics have changed so much since the late 1800s that and that's probably the biggest stumbling block, that and nuclear warheads, is how do you break it down? How do you break it down geographically? Because you might have a deep red state like Texas, but the densest spots of population, the densest areas of population are very blue, are very left-leaning, that are plugged into the system that we're trying to break away from. So, like I said, it's not going to be an easy fix. And I hope to God that it happens bloodlessly. I don't want, and that might be the most intriguing yet scariest thing of it all is everybody owns guns. Everybody, I'm sure you already know that the largest that America owns more guns than I believe they own more guns than the rest of the world combined. I could be wrong though, because of large militaries and things like that. So
yeah, I think I read somewhere there's 77 million registered gun owners, and of course that's not just one gun each, is it?
No. Your typical gun owner owns a couple. So. Yeah. And God bless them for it. That right there might be the same maybe the only reason that's holding back the elites from really doing what they want to do, which is complete control of everybody's lives.
Yeah, I think you're right. I think that's the you are the last holdout, really, and that pesky Second Amendment as well. Yeah, that's a real thorn in their side, isn't it?
I know, and it's pretty much the only part of the Constitution that's getting enforced on a daily basis too.
Yeah.
I'm not sure if we've talked about my my evolution when it comes to my view on the Constitution. I look at the Constitution as like it's an old children's story that Mom used to read to me that I love, but it's put away on the shelf. And it's not very useful anymore, unfortunately, because what's the use of a constitution that's never enforced? Or I shouldn't say never. It's only enforced when politically expedient.
Yeah.
When it's convenient for those in power to enforce. So.
Yeah, well, that brings us to what's happened recently in. I don't know if I always get mixed up between the Senate and the Congress, but. Hasn't there just been a vote about they're allowing warrantless searches. Which to
FISA,
me, to an outsider who doesn't know a great deal, to me,
right.
it sounds like that's a complete shredding of the Fourth Constitution, Fourth Amendment, as far as I can tell.
It is. It is. And you had, and it proves once again that the Republicans are the weakest of opposition parties ever, because you had 89, 90 Republicans that voted for it. They can't cobble together, they can't get on the same page when it comes to going in one direction. In fact, they haven't done that since the 80s, I guess.
When
yeah.
was the last time that the Republicans shrunk the state?
Probably shortly after the Civil War.
Yeah.
You know,
yes.
the whole not even that, because they tried to shrink the government. They tried to shrink it by 50%, and they wouldn't allow that. So, yeah, no, that's a that is window dressing. Shrinking the government was window dressing. From back in the day, goes all the way back to the Tea Party movement that failed miserably. Thanks to the GOP, thanks to the Republicans that took it over and said, "Oh no, oh that's a nice little toy you have there. Let us play with it," you know. And they sufficiently took that toy and locked it away in a closet, and only wheel it out every 4 years trying to get elected.
We have much the same issues here. I remember when the Labour Party, the left leaning party, supposedly left leaning party, was in power, and they were going hard on the authoritarian measures and the surveillance and all this sort of stuff. And the Conservative Party, the supposedly right-leaning party, you know, they campaigned on rolling back the surveillance state.
Right.
And then when they got in, what did they do? Right. They did nothing. They did nothing at all. And they immediately.
Did you think we were serious? Did you think we were serious?
Oh, yeah. Well, yeah. And then they immediately pivoted to. There's no reason why any law-abiding citizen would object to being under surveillance. You know. Right.
You're not doing anything wrong. If you're not doing anything wrong, you have nothing to fear.
Yeah. So the thing is that when I read about that stuff, it was only last night about this vote, because wasn't it a tie? And the speaker, who was supposedly a Republican, came down on the Democrat side, but the authoritarian side. Is that right?
Yes. Mike Johnson, I believe, is the new speaker's name. And he got the chair through some drama that we were kicking out McCarthy, I think was his name, Kevin McCarthy. We're kicking McCarthy out because he didn't keep his promises on some decent issues. I'm not sure if it was abortion or something that the Republicans were pushing to try to get their way for once. So he got booted out, and Johnson was put into place and voted in because he was going to get the job done and he was going to do the right thing. And yeah, it came down to a tie with the Speaker of the House being the tiebreaker. And come to find out, right before he was going to vote, he got pulled in to he got pulled in behind closed doors with the intelligence, the intelligence agencies. The intelligence apparatus, and was having he was told a few things. We don't have to use our imaginations to figure out what he was told. He was told to vote a certain way, and that's how he voted, and justified it. Came out, and afterwards he explained it by saying, "Oh well, I was against it at first until these experts told me some things that I can't talk about. It's for national security." So in other words, we need to boot. They need to boot him out if they've got a backbone, which I don't think they do. They haven't had a backbone in a while. They being the Republicans, they need to boot him out and get somebody else in there they're not even a decent opposition party. They own a majority in the Senate and the House, and yet they still wield no power. You know, and if that doesn't prove the uniparty, the fact that it's all puppet shows, it's all kayfabe, whatever you want to call it.
Yeah, we've got a uniparty as well. It's the same thing, you know. It's like the Conservative Party, when they won their election in 2019, they had an 80-seat majority. Now it's an overall majority. They had 80 seats more than anyone else put together.
Right.
And now that's a big majority. That is a big majority, and they were elected supposedly to get Brexit done, which of course they never did. You know, it's like, I mean, it's technically we're out of the European Union now, but we're following all of their rules because nobody can be bothered to do anything themselves. The European Union was just an excuse for decades for British politicians to do nothing and say, well, it's not up to us. It's not up to us. You know, there's nothing we can do. And yet they're still doing it. And they were also sort of, you know, have been, as they always do, they're going to stop the illegal immigration and the legal migration as well, which they never do. You know, and it's worse than ever now. We had last year we had 1.4 million people coming. You know, which if you extrapolate that to America, that's probably 10 million people, which is probably what you're getting, isn't it?
I've heard estimates of 9 to 12 million.
There you go.
In just the last couple of years, and which also means in the last 5 years, I think, we've had more immigration, illegal and otherwise, than all the immigration since Ellis Island after World War II. In that amount of time, we've had that much immigration compared to the last 50, 60 years. Yeah.
So this is because the thing about the vote that what was the vote called? You know, because I need to give it a name. Do you know what it's called?
Oh, I should know, but no.
Yeah. These are always confusing, aren't they?
It wasn't a bill. It wasn't a ratification of some sort.
Wasn't it that they were saying that they've been spying on Americans without a warrant anyway, but now they've said that it's okay to do it for a bit more? Is that what it was? Something like that?
Yeah, we're going to spy on everybody, but we're going to do it legally now.
Yeah.
You know.
Yes.
Oh, well, then that's perfectly okay then.
Yeah. It's all it's working absolutely as it should, isn't it? But it's just so. I mean, how do you feel about this? Because it's, you know, that to me. I mean, I'm not a constitutional scholar and I'm not an American, but to me that sounds as if that is almost like the definition of something that is unconstitutional, and yet they're doing it.
Right, and that goes back to the
what you were saying about the Constitution being a fairy story.
Exactly. Calling it unconstitutional is an empty threat now.
Yeah.
You know, it's only constitutional. They only somewhat align with the Constitution when it benefits the elites, when it benefits them, those in power, Republican, Democrat, Independent, whatever. The only time it gets properly implemented is when it's politically profitable for them, with the exception of the Second Amendment. And there are a lot of gun grabbers out there and people that push against 2A all the time, but they get significant pushback. I'll give them Americans. I've been immensely disappointed with as a whole our populace ever since 2-3 years ago for obvious reasons, but there has been very good pushback when it comes to protecting our gun rights, because we know that's the last line of defense, so to speak. In America, it seems to me that because of all our guns, they know they can't just go in there and bulldoze us. There's not going to be a Tiananmen Square moment because we're well armed. So what they're going to do is they're going to go through technology, and they're going to go backdoor with surveillance, with media control of the narrative, and control of large platforms that control the algorithms that control what you see and what you consume digitally, and manipulate you that way. So I think they call that's fourth or fifth generational warfare, where it's not a kinetic, bullets flying, mortars flying in the air type of warfare, but it's a very, very feminine, submissive kind of manipulation. And it's worked so far. Think about it this way. If I was in power and know that I can't go take, we have this little town, and they're a bunch of people that are against me holding power, and I know I can't bulldoze them. So yet I still want their taxes, and this is what kills me: is we're funding our own demise. We actually are. So you keep the population docile enough, and you placate them just enough to where they're still paying you to stay in power. You just have to nudge them. It goes back to, is it Cloward and Piven?
I know the thing you mean.
Where you just give them a nudge, and you give them a little nudge, and point them in this direction instead of that direction, and you still stay in power. So and it's going to get down to, I think we may be retreading what we last talked about last week, but it's going to take the normies, and we're talking about people that still watch Fox News and CNN. When those people are really hurting financially, and can't, I don't know, log into their Facebook accounts or something like that, or watch their favorite football team. And I love football. I'm not when their bread and circuses and their daily life is impacted negatively enough, that's the only time things are going to really change around here. Because those in power, they're smart. Well, I go back and forth about that.
I know. They're sort of smart, aren't they? But
I think that those that are really in power are smart, but those that are kind of the face of the elites, there are a lot of real idiots. I'm sorry.
The midwits, aren't they? The midwits, that sort of the middle managers of all this, because some of them are, I suppose that many of them are not these evil Machiavellians, but they believe in this ridiculous notion about so many things, about trans rights, and everything's racist, and there's a climate emergency, and all this stuff, and they believe all of this stuff. But so I agree, there's lots of idiots, but that there are some. It does seem as if there are some quite far-sighted nutcases right at the very top who are orchestrating all this. I mean, this is I can't prove this. This is the essence of conspiracy theory, isn't it? It's because you have to speculate. Something is happening. It's like the border, Texas border. There's a border. It's supposed to be shut, and yet it's open. And everybody knows that it should be shut, but it's open, and people are flooding across. And people say, "Oh, there's nothing you can do." Well, there of course there's things you can do. It's easy. There's easy things you can do, but they just open the border because that's what they want to happen, And then you have to start speculating as well. Why is it that they want it to happen?
Right.
And then you start going down some very dark paths. Well, because they want to destroy us all, because they want to kill us all, because they want millions of third world rapists and murderers coming over here. It's like.
Well, it wasn't. It was only 20 years ago when open borders. The Democrats were against the open borders because open borders was a Koch brother right-wing agenda for cheap labor.
Yeah, exactly.
And now the tables have turned. You know, they've switched that position entirely because we need open borders. If not, you're a racist.
Yeah,
know?
yeah. And
And
we've
it's
always
so
been at war
boggles,
with East Asia. Yeah,
yeah, right.
yeah,
Um, and it boggles the mind that there's still people out there that are afraid to be called racist.
yeah,
That it's such a nothing, empty threat now
yeah.
that the word means nothing anymore.
It's almost
Um,
becoming a badge of honor in a way.
yeah, yeah. It's like going to
Because it
Facebook
just
jail.
doesn't, all it means is you got under their skin somehow. You're not
Yeah,
agreeing with them.
you're over the
Uh,
target. You
yeah,
know,
yeah.
if you're
I mean,
doing
it's
that.
funny what you're saying about the only constitution that seems to be holding is the second.
Yep.
And this is a bit like, well, when we had the Brexit vote, it was a binary choice. Do you want to stay in or do you want to get out? And
Right.
there's no grey area in that. You've got a choice. You've got to choose. And because the choice was made, that was a real problem to the establishment.
Twice, right?
Yeah.
Y'all voted twice.
Well, yeah. But I mean, because it was a binary choice.
Yeah.
When they got the wrong result,
Wrong. Yeah.
they just couldn't. No matter what mental gymnastics they did, they couldn't make it so that it was okay to. They couldn't say, well, on the one hand, this, and maybe we didn't mean that. It was quite clear. And one of the things I think about the Second Amendment is that it was so. I mean, were they clever in the way they drafted the wording? Because it ends, shall not be infringed. So any infringement on gun rights is unconstitutional. And
yeah.
I mean, I used to think that like a lot of foreigners to America, that America was a bit bonkers with all their guns and everything. And when I used to think, well, I used to take a kind of a middle ground, and because there's that thing about the well-regulated militia.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I used to think, well, it's not a militia, is it? But is it just a load of yahoos with guns? It's like, I mean, that's not a militia, is it? Could you not have a militia? But the fact that it ends shall not be infringed is a piece of genius, really.
Yeah.
Because it means that, and it's like when Biden says, well, the Second Amendment has limits. Well, no, it doesn't.
Right.
No, it doesn't.
Right. No.
There it is up there. It's like, it doesn't have limits. Yeah, it's like.
Right. Yeah. Shall not be infringed. Period.
Yeah.
Not dot. Oh well, in case of no.
Yeah. Unless somebody gets upset, unless Oh.
Right. Somebody feels unsafe.
Because I have to say, I've been quite disappointed in Americans, sort of generally about their lack of defense of the numerous amendments, particularly the fourth. When and because people would often tell me, Americans would often tell me, well, the Second Amendment is there to defend all the others,
right?
And the Fourth Amendment got steamrolled, before Edward Snowden, and not a single shot was ever fired in its defence.
No, I know. I know.
Of course, I don't know how you would fire a shot in its defence, because if somebody's spying on you, what you're going to do is shoot the camera.
Right.
Personally, I think you should do, actually, frankly, but the fact that the way that the Second Amendment was drafted was a piece of genius, I think.
The founders knew what they were doing. Now, mind you, that was such a different time and era that they had a foundation of principles that they unified themselves around, and they had, no offense, they had a regime that was that they agreed we did not want to be like them, but they had a foundation of values and principles, and then they worked pillars that are the amendments and the Bill of Rights, and they worked off of those principles. And over the last 200 or something years, our principles and values have been whittled down to a nub, and we're left with what we have today, which is very little to nothing. So
it does seem like it's very much the last chance saloon, really, and you know the Second Amendment does seem to be the very last holdout. It does sound like
our last castle to defend, so to speak. Yes,
is the Alamo, isn't it? Really, it's like you know,
yeah.
And of course, it's quite. I don't know if you saw recently; it was all over the internet. There was a guy on a train in suburban London, and he was stabbing another bloke. I mean, it's a gang shit, you know.
Yeah.
And nobody could do anything because it was a bloke with a knife. You know, nobody's getting involved because, well, you know, for obvious reasons. But if somebody had a gun, he could have shot him.
Yep.
You know, and
what they're doing in America is they're taking, if you're familiar with the Daniel Perry case, I think is the guy's name. Daniel Perry was on a subway, a train in I believe New York. Everything like all of these cases seem to be in New York. There was a maniac attacking people. I'm not sure if there was a weapon involved, but did Perry shoot him?
No, I think he got him. He was a Marine, wasn't he? He got him in a kind of chokehold.
Okay, yes, got it. Yeah, he subdued him, put him in a chokehold. Unfortunately, the individual, maniacal idiot that he was, died, and now they're charging him, even though he was man enough to step up and do the right thing.
Yeah.
Protect the general populace, women and children on this train, on the subway, and he did the right thing. And he's the bad guy.
Yeah.
And they're doing that on purpose because they want to send the message that I think this all is under the umbrella of what they're calling anarcho tyranny, where you punish the good guys and you let the bad guys do whatever they want because we say so. Yeah. This is, and there's case after case after case. The Kyle Rittenhouse case a couple of years ago. It was everything was on video. You saw it. It was obviously self-defense. Yet they still tried to take him to trial. And he was. Luckily, we had either a jury or a judge or whatever that was just sane enough to let that poor kid go, he should. But he should have never been taken to trial. Yeah, and it's the elites just pushing buttons. And like I said, all these decisions that they make don't directly affect them, and they could care less. You mentioned earlier, I'm sure there's a few people that think that this is really the right thing to do, and their heart's in it, and they're true believers on that. That's what they're doing. So they don't think, and it's like nobody ever thinks that they're the bad guy. So the few of these people think that this is the right thing that needs to be done. And then there's the elite that could care less. They don't look at it as right or wrong or good or evil. It's whether I gain power.
Hold on, mate. Hold on.
Go ahead.
Sorry, Sunday gardening. Yeah.
Hell of a time to mow a lawn, huh? No. Like I said, you have some frontline people, some clerics of the regime that are true believers, and they think this is the right thing to do. The elites, they don't think of things as good and bad or good and evil. They think of what gets me power, what keeps my power, or what loses my power, and that's their spectrum that they work on. And the morality of good or right or wrong isn't even in their purview. What a case in point, I'd like to dovetail into election integrity, if you don't mind.
Yeah.
I'm going to read a little bit of a tweet from Vivek Ramaswamy. I don't think I've ever said his last name out loud, so forgive me, Vivek. It's about whether or not we have an upcoming election, as we all know. And it just starts off, he says, this is how we move beyond fights over stolen elections and how we can unite our country. 1, make election day a national holiday.
That's a good idea.
and it's a great idea, and especially I'm always of the mind that, okay, the federal government, we have too many holidays to begin with, in my opinion. I agree with this one though. You make it a national holiday where all employees, you give your employees the day off, one day, and they can go off and vote. Maybe even with pay, but we can work that out later. Number 2, single day voting. Number 3, paper ballots. All right. Number 4, government issued voter ID to match their voting file. In other words, some type of, I don't know about government issued, though that's what we have now when it comes to driver's licenses. So maybe I'm just splitting hairs. In other words, a valid ID, picture ID, where you can go, this is me, I'm voting, nobody else. Number 5, English as the sole language that appears on the ballot. I miss the days when where English was the only language you could be able to speak and write if you wanted to drive professionally. So that's no longer the case. But those 5 points right there, and it goes down to the fact that we could do that. We could just have paper ballots. We could just have single day voters. It's well within our power to do that, but they won't. They purposely have a closed looped electronic voting that isn't open software, so other people can see if so outside forces can't audit what these voting machines are doing.
I've always thought, why do you need voting machines? I mean, I know the numbers are big, but it's only counting. It's only counting, isn't it?
Yeah.
You should have a count, have a second count, have a third count. Different 3 different sets of people. I mean, it doesn't seem as if it doesn't seem as if you need a voting machine.
Right.
It's not calculus.
No.
It's counting.
You could get an abacus up there or a $5 calculator or whatever. I'll kick my shoes off and count on my toes and fingers if that's what it counts. If that's what it takes. But yes, and it could be done, but they won't get it done, and it would take a huge push from many more people, more powerful than me, to get it done. But it could be done, and the fact that it won't be done or hasn't happened yet, especially after the fortified elections of last time, that proves that they don't want it to happen.
Yeah,
and they don't want
so
it to
what's
happen.
The reason? The reason is because it's likely that they're trying to hide something. Now, you see, this is the sort of thing that happens. This is the difference between the state and the citizen, is that if the citizen does something, increasingly the citizen is being distrusted. Why are you doing that? Why are you paying for that stuff in cash? Why are you doing this? Why? It all sounds a bit suspicious to me. And yet when it's the state, they do whatever they like, and you're not allowed to ask them. You're not allowed to apply the same default skepticism as they apply to us.
Right. It goes back to the meme of the NPC saying, well, if you're not doing anything wrong, you have nothing to fear. Okay, fine. Let's see all our state secrets then. And then the NPC gets angry.
National security.
Yeah. National security. Yeah. Okay, well, what about my family security? National security, that's fine. Well, the nation is comprised of individuals, and the individual security should trump that. So
I was talking to somebody who told me that she worked in the counting of the local election locally, and she was telling me all sorts of checks and balances that they had that meant that it was complicated. I mean, I can't remember, but she was told the things that she was allowed to do and she wasn't allowed to do, and how it couldn't be interfered with. And I mean, this was probably some years ago now. And what I find so astonishing about democracies is that our whole election system is relies on people who are interested in democracy but are not interested in the result.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean?
They won't be held accountable for the result.
Yeah.
You know? Yeah.
But also that, you know, it seems incredible because even if you're somebody who just goes, I'm volunteering to go and count in the election. You know? Now, you may be a very, very moral person, you know, and you may do the job actually perfectly as it's supposed to be done, you know, and with complete integrity. But you're still a person. You're still a person. You still have opinions, and you probably still have a preference as to who wins.
Yeah.
But it seems incredible to me that our elections have existed, you know, supposedly fairly for so long under those circumstances. You know, but maybe it's because of those checks and balances is why it has always worked. But then maybe it hasn't always worked. I mean, I do think if they'd had that second referendum for the Brexit vote, my feeling is, I've got nothing to base this on, just my feeling. My feeling is they would have cheated.
Yeah.
I don't think they did cheat in the first one because I didn't think they thought they had to.
Right.
They thought they got it sewed up.
Yeah.
And I think probably the same is probably true for Trump in 2016. I think that probably they didn't cheat because they didn't think they'd have to.
Right.
When it comes, by the time it got to 2020, well, that's a different thing, maybe.
Oh, yeah, exactly. Yeah. 2016, you saw the reactions of all the Hillary voters shocked that how dare their queen was not coronated into office. And then that's when they had to pull out the shenanigans. And now you've read that Time article about the fortification of the elections, I hope. If not, I'll send you a link.
Is this Time magazine?
Time magazine, yes, one of the oldest, most venerable magazines in America.
But that is not a currency that we can trust like we used to, is it?
True, very true. But what they did, sometimes they lower their mask though, and they interviewed dozens of people that pretty much admitted that they fortified the election through Facebook, through technology and influencers, and I'll send you that link. I've archived it because it's one for the ages.
Yeah, because we can put it in the description. Because put it in description because that would be interesting. But it's funny because the other thing that's happened, just to segue slightly off of this, which is also interesting, is that I've seen a couple of things of, you know, the OJ trial, because OJ just died, isn't he?
Yeah.
Yeah. And they've interviewed they've interviewed some of the jurors, and there was a woman. They interviewed this woman.
I know exactly where you're going. Go ahead.
Yeah, and she basically just said, "Well, I wanted him to get off because I thought it was a social justice thing. It didn't matter that he killed them because he killed two white, you know." And she just sort of shrugged her shoulders, and you know, it was, I don't know. It's just,
it's galling. I know. We try to put our faith in a system, but like you said, the system is comprised of humans with their own biases and their own foibles and their own agendas, you know. And she didn't have an agenda. You know what this older lady, she wanted to be on TV, you know. She knew that she had a little bit of fame because the hype and the blow up. I mean, this was the trial of the century, and they hid jurors' faces, and I believe they did a pretty good job of securing who the jurors were. But the second that jury was over, all these jurors were hitting Good Morning America and all these TV shows because they wanted a bit of fame, you know. And it doesn't surprise me at all that revenge was an issue on this. And regardless of innocent or guilty, the way that trial was run and the way it was hyped up and the way it was a farce from the get-go. You know, I have no idea if OJ did it. I suspect that he did. I could care less if he did it or not. But the way that it was done, I mean, I was like everybody else. I was glued to my TV. I watched as much as I could of it too. And I remember having a huge, horribly bad take. Have you seen the reaction? It was Oprah. I think it was Oprah Winfrey. They were watching it live, and Oprah had her live studio audience.
Yeah.
The camera trained on the audience right when they announced that he was innocent, and half the audience celebrated, and the other half didn't. And I think you know where the demographic kind of where those lines were drawn there, and it was so polar opposite, you know. And this was what year was this? The 98, 90, you know, I mean, this was the late 90s, if I remember correctly.
95 or 6, I think, wasn't it? Something like that.
Maybe.
Yeah.
I don't know. I should look it up. But, and this is how many years ago? And those lines had already been delineated. So,
yeah. It's like when there was one of the first things OJ said after he was acquitted, didn't he? He said, "Can I have my gloves back?"
That's funny.
We shouldn't laugh, but that was,
it's good to dust some old ones off there like that.
Yeah.
Have you seen the meme of how OJ's funeral should go? They should put him in a white Bronco to get him to the cemetery with all the cops behind him, you know, just like this case. So
well, it would be about the same speed as that car chase, wasn't it? You know, so but I suppose the thing is, I suppose that might have been the first example of what we're starting to know now as activist judges.
Yeah.
You know, because I think what we've got now is, and there's a suspicion that George Soros is behind all this, you know, and I'm reading his book at the moment, and it's a hard read. And I did buy it off him. I bought it secondhand because I didn't want him to get any of the money for it. But I just wanted to try and see if I could get into his head a bit, you know, because it's written by him. It's his own book. But you've got to take this thing, the sort of the long march through the institutions thing that they talk about. Is that, I mean, I'm 56 now, and so, you know, High Court judges and Supreme Court judges are going to be my age. They're going to be younger than me. You know, they're going to be in their late 40s or whatever. So if we take it back 30 years to, you know, to 1994, 95, which is around about the OJ trial.
Yeah.
In that time, we've had all these people, the midwits, the accredited midwits, the people who are ostensibly highly qualified, you know, because they're just in the institutions.
Yeah.
And all the institutions have been, you know, from university upwards, have all been populated by the same type of people. They've all got the same opinions about everything. And now they're not just activist human rights lawyers and you know, immigration lawyers and all that sort of stuff, which we have for some time. Now they're judges. Now they're High Court judges, Supreme Court judges. And it seems to me, I mean, I'm no lawyer, but it seems to me that we're not really. It's hard for me to say because I'm not qualified, but it seems to me that it doesn't really matter what the law says. Once the activist judge gets to the top, he can decide what the law is.
Yeah.
So we're getting, and I think you have this phrase in the States about how they're going after Donald Trump with lawfare.
Yeah.
Just using the law to, you know, no matter what, you know, or pretending it's law, and just say, well, that's what the judge said. Oh, it's got to be okay because that's what the judge said.
Yeah.
But, I mean, wasn't there that woman on the U.S. Supreme Court? I think she's the newest one, the black woman.
Yes.
Who said that the First Amendment is an obstacle for them to bring in prosecutions for hate speech.
Yeah. Oh, it impedes the federal. It impedes federal power.
Yeah,
How dare? How
And
dare that
this
it
is a
does
Supreme
that?
Court judge.
I know. Well,
This is
you
the
know,
person at the top of the legal
I
profession.
know. Well, diversity hires go all the way from the bottom to the top nowadays,
Yeah,
man.
yeah. But I mean, the fact that she is black is neither here nor there, because Clarence Thomas is a pretty solid bloke, isn't he?
Right. Yeah.
And you know, I mean, he's right at the top as well, and wasn't he one of the voices who came up who said that the affirmative action thing was unconstitutional or something?
He's written a few papers about how affirmative action is actually bad. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. But you know, he's a lot older than she is, so he's
Yeah.
going to be out before she is. You know.
Right. Because she's been properly indoctrinated.
Yeah.
You know.
Yeah.
And you were talking about these elites that were activists and then lawyers and then judges. They've already had their opinions solidified, and they know, because they're authoritarians at heart, that they need to listen to the other authoritarians. So when the new current thing comes down the pike, they get on board and can progress their agenda also. So they already know that, okay, I have to agree with them because they're in power, because I want to stay in power, and we're all going to go, this direction and toe this company line, so we all stay in power.
Yeah.
It's all authoritarian,
Well, it does seem as if our institutions are kind of, it's common for us to say that the institutions have been captured, but I think that is true in the fact that one of the ways of capture is that you just hire people who are just like you.
Mm-hmm.
You hire people who have the same opinions as you. You don't hire somebody who disagrees with you, because if you think you're right and you're morally right, why would you hire somebody who you believe is morally wrong?
Right.
Right.
Especially when it's based on the color of someone's skin.
Well, yeah. I mean,
I mean, yeah, and if I was a business owner, I wouldn't want to. If I owned my own small business, I sure as hell wouldn't be hiring any communists.
Yeah.
So I understand that, but it should boil down to meritocracy, though, not whether or not you align with me politically or culturally. It should be whether it's the best person for the job. Because it would benefit your company to get as much done and do as much business and be as profitable as possible. So,
which you think would be the raison d'etre of the business, isn't it? I think I saw quite a good sort of Twitter or TikTok video of this woman. She was a youngish woman, 30s or something. She had a business, and she was saying that she would never hire anybody who had pronouns in their bio, because she knows they're going to be trouble.
Exactly. And even if they aren't, overtly, a leftist, if you're that easy to go along with the program, no, you need to go kick rocks and get down the road. Because if you're going to just as easily, even if you don't, like I said, even if you're not a true believer, if you're that big of a sheep to go with the next current thing that I don't need to be around people like that,
Yeah, because you're going to have people with no principles, aren't you? Basically, because you're going to have people who's not going to stand up for anything.
Yep.
Because you're just going to, you're not going to approach things on principle, what things are right. You're just going to think it's expediency. What side should I be on that's going to advance me? And also somebody who might have pronouns in their bio, it's like they're going to be somebody who's probably quite easily offended and is going to use stuff. Oh, what do you mean? How dare you presume my gender?
Right.
I mean, who needs that? Oh, fuck's sake! We just want to sell some ice cream or whatever it is.
Right, widgets. Yeah. I just want to conduct business as best as I can. Yeah.
So I mean, what's the do you talk to other people? I mean, this thing that I discovered yesterday about this vote about the Fourth Amendment. I mean, what do people think about this? That the Constitution used to be, as I understand it. I mean, I'm just a foreigner and I don't know, but as far as the accusation or the the impact of saying something was unconstitutional used to have real teeth, didn't it? It used to have real teeth, did it not? If somebody said something was unconstitutional, then it meant you couldn't do it any longer.
Yeah, it seemed to have teeth years and years ago. Now, mind you, I really did 20, 30 years ago, maybe.
Yeah.
I didn't get politically motivated till 20 years ago, I guess.
19 years ago, yeah.
And so it could be, it would not surprise me in the least that publicly, yes, it would be like, oh, okay, well, that's unconstitutional, I'll quit doing that. And then behind closed doors, the powers that be would just go ahead and do it anyway.
Yeah.
That wouldn't surprise me at all. But yes, at least 20 years ago, publicly, it seemed to have teeth, whether or not it really was or not. And of course, this goes back to, we haven't had a real republic since Jekyll Island in 1913, I believe, if we want to talk about some, recent ancient history of America, when they instituted the Federal Reserve. Yeah. And we started directly voting for our senators. And it's that long push towards a direct democracy. Because if you can get everybody to vote direct democracy, if you can have everybody vote directly for those in power, and you have an easily manipulated populace, you can steer those votes however you want. So I think it's an ongoing cancer that's been growing for far too long, in my opinion.
Yeah, I think one of the things that, one of the ways in which I used to defend our systems, like the US and Europe and Britain and Australia, and is that people would always say something quite cynical, like, well, they're just after your votes, aren't they? And I used to think, well, yes, they are, but in some places they're not after your vote, because they just, point a gun at you, and it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter who you vote for. They're not interested in your vote.
Right. Yeah.
So
yeah, this is my vote.
I used to think that it was better than that. At least they have. Yeah. At least they have to persuade you. At least they have to manipulate you to vote for them. At least they have to do that. But I suppose over time, as they say, all institutions tend towards corruption, and I suppose that is what's happened. I mean, I think. And when do you think? I mean, I know there's the 1913 thing. I mean, the Federal Reserve thing, but when do you think that the rot really began? In Britain, I think the rot probably happened in the 90s sometime. Okay. I mean, maybe I'm mistaken. I mean, certainly when Tony Blair became Prime Minister in 1997, we didn't realise. We didn't know what a monster he was then.
And you never do, I think.
Probably that's true.
You have to be able to step back and kind of like, okay, well, this happened, that happened, that happened. Oh, okay, that's so.
Yeah. Adolf Hitler was a Time Magazine Man of the Year in 1936 or whatever it was, wasn't he? So.
Yeah.
But I do think that the other thing that is that the authoritarianism started in a big way after September the 11th. Whatever you think of whether you think it was an inside job or anything, the fact is that they capitalized on that, the Patriot Act.
And they'd already written up the Patriot Act way before 9/11.
Just waiting for the time.
What's that? Yeah, exactly. They had it in a drawer and went, oh, okay, well, that happened. Let me go through some files. Here we go. Let's do this. I mean, they've had that in the works for the long time. If you ask me, with America, when it really started going downhill. We could go back to the Civil War. You had a faction of states that wanted to break away, and in the Constitution, that venerable piece of that document that it is, it says that when in case of a tyrannical government, the people have the right to break away from that government. That's what the South tried to do. And Lincoln, which is the most overrated president in the world, the tyrant that Lincoln was, said, no, not on my watch. America's not going to break up while I'm in office. I fought too long, and I was in that log cabin, and not under my watch. So he came down like a ton of bricks on the South. And say what you will about slavery. Slavery was not the issue. It was a convenient PR front that
I've heard this, people. Yeah, I mean, I've heard this.
And yes, and slavery was horrible. I'm not condoning slavery at all, but so few people know that the Civil War was not about slavery. It was an issue. It was a part of it, yes. But the real reason was you had Lincoln and the federal government did not want the states to break away from them because remember the North was getting a ton of their product, all their cotton and all their products from the South were getting dirt cheap product from the North, and they needed the South. So
yeah, certainly I've read some things of some stuff that General Lee said, who sounded as if he was dead against slavery.
And like I said, slavery is just it was horrible. Yes, it was horrible, but it was just a convenient excuse for the federal government to put the boot to the heel of the South, and the way they treated the South during and after the war proves it, that it was nobody is going to break away because it's the United States of America, not if they just kept the Articles of Confederation, the Articles of Confederation that preceded the Constitution said that anybody wanted to break away, have at it, man. That was the whole reason of the American Revolution, was to break away from a tyrannical regime, and if any government becomes tyrannical, you should be able to break away from it. But Lincoln said, no, not under my watch, and got rid of habeas corpus. He imprisoned and killed journalists. He got rid of a lot of his political opponents. He was a dastardly evil president that has been we have brushed over and whitewashed or cleaned up his reputation over the years. I remember going to school, and it was Washington, Jefferson, Lincoln, and Franklin, and Madison, and all the Lincoln was always included in the list of good guys.
As if he was one of the founding fathers, yeah. But of course he wasn't. Yeah. Well, there's some iconoclasm for an episode actually. So we'll have to look at that. I mean, I'm constantly being encouraged by people to re-examine the legacy of Churchill. I mean, I'm a big Churchill lover. Generally. Okay. I'm a big Churchill fan, but there are people who are constantly challenging me to review my position on him.
Me too. I've gone back and forth. What's your opinion on the Lusitania? I've seen people postulate that the Lusitania was the American. What kind of ship was it?
It was an ocean liner. It was an ocean liner. It was a passenger liner. Yeah.
That was sunk by a German U-boat.
Yeah.
There have been some people that have postulated that, and now mind you, the Lusitania also had ammunition and had
almost
ammo, and ammo for you guys to help y'all out. We were like smuggling in. We weren't supposed to be giving y'all any aid, so we took an ocean liner and threw a bunch of bullets or bombs or rifles or something in it.
Yeah, rather than a freighter. Yeah, yeah.
Right. There's been some people that postulated, conspiracy theorists, whatever, that said that Churchill knew he had to bring America into the war, and it would take something really bad for America to enter World War, because at the time we were pretty isolationist. We were like, we don't want to get involved. That's over there, you know. But he was the one that ordered that. He either knew or he ordered the Lusitania across the Atlantic, right through where the wolf packs were of German subs, and knew something bad would happen. What have you heard? Have you heard that theory before?
Yeah, I haven't heard that one specifically, but the thing is that, you know, how are we supposed to know any of this stuff?
I know.
How are we supposed to know anything?
I know.
We know. Just in the last few years, we know how much they lie to us.
I know.
You know, how are we supposed to? I mean, this is history. I mean, it's like it's lost in the mist of time. I mean, you know, that if somebody was to say, well, it was a British sub that sunk it, you know, I mean, I wouldn't be surprised. I wouldn't be, you know.
Right. Well, now, and like I said, keep in mind that I love Churchill. And a strong leader. And I take it you've seen the Gary Oldman movie where he portrays Churchill. Have you seen that?
Yeah.
Love that movie. Because God knows Britain needed a strong leader, and as quirky and as odd as that man was, he seemed just charismatic enough to lead y'all to victory. And I love that part of it. But it would not surprise me at all if he's been whitewashed too.
Yeah.
And it goes back to what we've talked about already: human nature. That once an individual gets enough power, and he has his own biases and his or hers, you know, their own biases. What's the saying that power corrupts and power.
Absolute power corrupts absolutely.
Corrupts absolutely. Who knows what kind of tricky stuff had been done. That said, we do need our heroes. We really do need our heroes.
Well, you see, I thought that Lincoln was one of them.
Yeah.
But now you're telling me something different.
Yeah, read his diaries. His diaries are out there. You've got multiple letters, because back in the day, they didn't have Skype, but they wrote letters. And there's lots of letters out there, correspondences from him to other people, how explaining he could have cared less about the blacks. He didn't care less about them. It was just a politically expedient facet of what he wanted accomplished. Same thing with Margaret Thatcher. I grew up loving Ronald Reagan and Maggie Thatcher, Iron Maiden, you know, and Bonzo, you know. And I've heard a few things that, well, she might have had to do some shady stuff too. And at the same time,
did you ever get in the States? Did you ever get that British puppet program, Spitting Image?
Yes.
Yeah. Yes. Did you ever see this brilliant dynamic of Ronnie Reagan and Margaret Thatcher, and they were like sort of supposedly having an affair, and there's a bit where they're kind of kissing, and then she goes off and she goes, she's a fine looking woman. Too bad I'm only screwing her country.
I need to look that old show up again, man. That was a classic.
No, but there was So the thing is, it's so difficult these days in trying to get yourself anchored into what is true and what isn't, because we know that they can lie to us. You know, we know that they have the ability, and we know that they have the motive to lie to us all the time. And it's so difficult trying to find out what's true and what isn't. I mean, the thing about the Lusitania is that, and it's something that is never, I should have dug into it a bit more, but the Lusitania was 1915. America didn't come into the war until 1917. So there was a big lag. Now, what I learned at school was there was a thing called the Zimmerman telegram. Have you heard of that? Now, the Zimmerman
It
telegram
rings
was
a
a
bell, but I
telegram.
can't remember what it is right
Well,
off the.
yeah, I mean, I'm sure some of my contributors will correct me, but the as I understand it, as I remember from school, the Zimmerman telegram was a telegram from the German state to the Mexican state to try and get the Mexicans to attack interests in the southern part of the United States, or Puerto Rico, or places that were under the American sphere of influence at the time, just to cause trouble.
Yeah.
In the southern part of the United States, so the Americans wouldn't get involved in the European thing. And the telegram was discovered, and it was shown to the American leadership, and then the American leadership declared war on the Germans. So, as far as I understand, as far as I remember it, that was the key, because the Lusitania thing was just like more of a PR thing. Look at these dastardly Germans, and look at how many Americans were killed because of the dastardly Germans.
Right.
But certainly it was part of it. But as I remember from school, from my history lessons, which I'm sure were absolutely perfectly 100% true, that's what I remember. But it's so difficult trying to find this stuff, and we're bringing this bang up to date into the Israel-Palestine thing, because we all knew one thing, and then all of a sudden it's like, oh, well, that's not true. Now there's something else, and I don't want to take sides in the Israel-Palestine thing. I don't want to take sides. I'm not interested in Israel, and I'm not interested in Palestine. My problem with the whole Israel-Palestine thing is that we had after the October 7th thing, and like you said, 15 years ago, the world's sympathy would have been completely with Israel 15 years ago.
Yeah.
And they thought it was going to be the same this time, and it absolutely wasn't. And on the day that it happened, that October the 7th thing, there were massive demonstrations in London. Now, this was before the Israelis had even retaliated.
Yeah.
This was days before they'd even retaliated. And there were hundreds of thousands of people in London, all with a Palestinian flag. Now, where all the Palestinian flags had come from so quickly like that, I mean, you'd think in London there might have been a few hundred Palestinian flags, and suddenly there were hundreds of thousands of them immediately like that, and like I say, I'm not taking the Israeli side at all, but all of a sudden we had 100,000 Islamists screaming for Jewish blood in London, and some people are saying, and I don't want to get, I don't want to get into this. It's a genocide. It's not a genocide. Whatever it is, but I suppose what I'm saying is we have to take everything that we are told with a pinch of salt. We just can't tell. We can't tell who's lying and who's telling the truth.
No. And what kills me is we're in the age of information, where we could just Google and we'll find out things. Well, you and I both know that every search engine and the entirety of the internet, the internet that we're able to access at least, is highly curated. And between algorithms and things that get memory hold and things like that we can't even really find out the truth with just a simple search. It takes tons of digging and going through archives and things like that to find out things like that. They purposely made it hard to find out the truth, and I'm sure that's their plan all along. That's why it was so important that Elon bought Twitter. That Rumble seems to be thriving because it actually has a much better First Amendment stance. And there are little castles, little islands, little spots of hope when it comes to really finding out the truth. And this goes back to the fifth generational warfare. where those that be don't want the truth out there, and they want our eyes pointing over here when we want to be looking over there. So
it's difficult because, I mean, how do you find your how do you find your position on certain things? You in a way, I think you just have to trust your instincts.
Yep.
I think, because
you got,
and you should allow your instincts to be influenced by things that you find out subsequently, but and I don't think you should be dogmatic, but there are certain things that you should hold to, like principles change, facts change, but principles shouldn't. Principles should remain as they should be. But it's difficult. It's difficult to trying to find. I mean, I've got this friend of mine, lawyer friend. He's one of my best friends, but he believes every single thing the mainstream says about Donald Trump. He's a dictator. He's, I mean, Trump's an arsehole. They're all arseholes.
Yeah.
And I was saying to him about I've got my own selection of arseholes, and one of the ones that is I consider to be vastly worse than Donald Trump is that pretty boy in Canada, Justin Trudeau.
Yeah.
And I said, Trump may be an arsehole, but he never throws in with his bank account.
Right. Right.
And so what kind of person would you like to be in charge? And everything is so polarized and partisan, and people think they can. I imagine this happens in America. People think it's quite happy to shred the Constitution so long as it gets at our enemies.
Yeah.
And not thinking 3 inches in front of your face that when it changes,
which is that. I know, and that's what kills me about the Republicans that pushed the Patriot Act. They didn't have the forethought to think that, okay, we're reinforcing. I'm sure the surveillance state was already there, but they tripled its power, not thinking that surveillance might be pointed back towards them.
Yeah.
How do you not think, like you said, three inches in front of your face, and think it could be wielded against you?
It's like the police throwing a tear gas Canada when the wind's coming this way.
Yeah.
Oh fuck! I didn't see that coming.
Right. Even though you didn't check the wind, come on. But briefly, Israel and Palestine and all that. And I've learned that Israel is going to do whatever. Those in power in Israel are going to do what they're going to do and damn everybody else. They think because America has their back, Big Brother America is supporting us, so we can go do whatever we want, or Big Brother's going to come beat you up. That's how they're acting. That's what they think, in my opinion. So they're gonna cause as much havoc as they think they can get away with because we're supporting them. If we were to pull our support from them, you would see a vastly different Israel, those in power. And I really wish we would. We need to pull all aid from all countries. I'm talking Ukraine. I'm talking.
Yeah, I think you're right. I think you're right.
We need to go to complete isolationist lockdown version for the next 20, 30, maybe even 50 years. Secure our borders, secure our voting, our elections, and then we might have a chance of surviving for the future and for my kids and my kids' kids and whatnot. That's what needs to happen. It's not going to happen. I don't think. God, I hope I'm wrong. Many times I wish I'm wrong about things like that, but that's what it's going to have to take. What the IDF and the Israel military and the elites are doing in Gaza and the West Bank and all that are war crimes, flat out atrocities. I'm not going to call it a genocide, but what they're doing are definitely war crimes, and they're wrong, top to bottom. You know,
I think the thing is that the what's considered to be acceptable has shifted. For instance, like during the Second World War, you know, the Germans bombed London horribly, you know. But what we did we did 10 times what they did, you know.
True.
At the time, it was considered, well, they fucking deserved it. You know, they'd started it, they deserved it. You know, as the head of Bomber Command, Bomber Harris, Arthur Bomber Harris, his name, he became known as. He said, you know, they sowed the wind, now they'll reap the whirlwind. That was what he said, you know. Now, at the time, it was considered to be acceptable. They started it, you know, and, you know, there wasn't really any such thing as precision bombing then. You know, there isn't really now, but there definitely wasn't then. And they couldn't hit anything. They couldn't hit a factory. So they just got bombed everywhere, you know. So now that would now be considered a war crime, but it wasn't considered that then, you know. So things have changed. I mean, there's another example is when people say the Israelis cutting off the water and the gas and the stuff, and they say, well, that's a war crime, you know. Well, okay, when the Japanese came down the Malaya Peninsula to attack Singapore's an island, the reservoirs were on the mainland. So they came down there on their bicycles. Nobody expected them to come all the way through the jungle. Came down on their bicycles, and they beat the British out of the Malayan Peninsula, and they all retreated into Singapore Island, and then they turned the taps off. Now, is that a war crime, or is that just warfare?
Right. Now, that's interesting. Very valid points there, but it's a bit of apples and oranges when you're talking about Israel with all its technology, and you have the Palestinians who have, it's pretty much all of Palestine is pretty much, I'm not going to call it a concentration camp, but it is an open air prison because they have had, they've been blockaded on the ocean, so they can't get imports there. The only imports that Israel approves of, mind you, and then they've been blockaded, they've been walled in everywhere else. To the fact that they border the very north part of Egypt, and Egypt won't let refugees in. Jordan and all the other surrounding countries won't let refugees in. So their backs are up against the wall.
It does make you wonder why. It does make you wonder why the Egyptians haven't opened their border as a relief valve, hasn't it? You know?
I know it's a jacked up, complicated situation. Top.
It is complicated. It is complicated, and this is, you know, and one of the things that I found has been quite dispiriting about this whole thing is that there was sort of a consensus building amongst people. Let's call it the freedom movement. You know, people against the state and all the rest of it. And then it's almost as if, I'm not saying this is what happened, but if you wanted to splinter that movement, to split it, you have an Israel-Palestine war, and then people who were pro-Palestine and then people who were pro-Israel, and suddenly they were against each other. And then you've got people saying, well, you don't care about the genocide, you're just a bastard, you know, and so it is complicated, and I get quite frustrated when people say, well, it's just simple. Oh, well, you must just agree with genocide. No, I don't fucking agree with genocide.
It's not a dichotomy like that at all. Yeah.
And
I even balk at calling it a war. That would imply that both sides are armed.
That's a good point.
And I'm sorry, the Palestinians aren't. They might have some, you know, they might have a few rifles. They don't have planes. They don't have a tank division.
They're not allowed to have a military, are they? I suppose.
No,
they're not allowed to.
You know, so it's a conflict. I'll call it that. It is not a war, an Israeli-Palestine war, because that, like I said, it assumes that both sides are well armed. No, only one side is well armed. Have you heard about the artificial intelligence that the IDF is using called Where's Daddy? Have you heard about
No, I
this?
haven't. No, what's that? It
It's
doesn't
evil.
sound very nice.
It's evil. They they are using an AI program that they're tracking all the Palestinians, and they're punching in names into this into the AI that they think are Hezbollah, and the AI can predict when individual X will be home. So they can bomb the crap out of the home when they know they're going to be home with their family. Hence they call it Where's Daddy?
Oh God.
That okay. And they're talking about, well, they have underground bunkers and things like that. Well, Israel dug most of those tunnels years ago for the Palestinians. So they know about these tunnels. And every time they every time they make a crater out of a building and they go digging and they go, oh, look, there's a tunnel. Oh my God, there's a tunnel. Well, yeah, you guys dug those tunnels for the Palestinians years ago. I don't know if it was food storage or something like that. But yeah, to bring down a 12-story building, killing 500 people to get one Hezbollah guy, I'm sorry.
I mean, I think one of the things
and you can talk collateral damage all you want, but that's just evil, man.
Yeah. Well, I think one of the things that we, as sort of, we can all turn into armchair strategists, can't we, about this thing? But until you have a 12-story building fall on top of your head, you don't really know what the fuck you're talking about, do you?
No.
And it's, I mean, I suppose that's one of the things about the September 11th thing is that, at least some Americans know what knows what it's like to have a building fall on top of them, and the thing is, it's all so fucking grim, isn't it? The whole thing is so grim, and people talk about it as if it's a simple right and wrong, and it just isn't,
No.
And they've been banging on about this issue for 75 years at least, and maybe 3,000 years, and the idea that we can come along and sort it out, and somebody says that, well, this is the solution, it's the thing that, I mean I do care about these people, obviously, in the sense that I care about any strangers, but what I mostly care about is I mostly care about the people who are closest to me, and I mean, just as an example, compared to what's happening in Gaza, compared to what was happening with the grooming gangs in the northern England, I don't give a shit about Gaza. I don't give a shit about that. Don't give a fucking shit about that. And yet we're all being made to make that our concern, and war is just horrible. I'm sure, never having experienced it, I'm sure it's horrible. But what happened in the north of England, and this shames me as an Englishman in a way that nothing else has. What happened in North England? There wasn't even a war going on.
Yeah.
And that was happening.
Yeah.
And it's utterly disgusting. And people are expecting me to care about, fights between Palestinians and Israelis 3,000 miles away.
Right.
Compared to that, I don't give a shit. I really don't. But it's not to say that I don't. It's not to say that I don't care at all. But I've only got so many things I can care about.
Exactly. Yeah. No, my heart goes out to all the Israeli citizens that died. My heart goes out to all the Palestinians and women and children and elderly Palestinians that died also. But we've had 10 million, maybe upwards of 12 million illegal immigrants enter our country, and they're all going directly to like Baltimore and Philadelphia, and it isn't like they're all camping out in Texas, California, New Mexico. They're heading inland, deep inland, and God knows what they're up to. The whole transient kid thing is still going on.
Yeah.
We've got lots of bigger fish to fry.
And what's happened to all those kids that went missing in Hawaii? Or have we all moved on from that now?
Right. Oh God, that's a great point, man. Yeah.
I mean, do we not give a shit about them anymore? Oh, that's
No,
just yesterday.
that's been memory hold. We're not. No. You're not allowed to talk, think, or look in that direction. I know, and I don't think maybe there is an agenda out there that is doing this on purpose, but I think it's just more chaos. You just keep stirring the pot, and
maybe chaos is the strategy. Maybe chaos is,
a narco tyranny. You keep stirring it up. Those in power are still in power, and let the peasants fight amongst themselves. As long as they're paying their taxes and funding our power, let it fly.
It's a funny thing, isn't it? That thing you're talking about. It was the Cloward Piven strategy, whatever it is. I can't remember.
You overwhelm the system through the welfare system, the education system. You overwhelm the system and keep it in constant chaos. What was their end? It's been a while since I've looked into them, but
but it's funny, isn't it? Because you sort of think, look, if you were to go back to the 50s or the 60s or something, we had a British establishment then, as everywhere has, isn't it? And there were people at the top who took the cream for themselves, and everybody else had to fight for everything else that was. And there were the losers at the bottom, as there always are,
Yeah.
But just to try and simplify it a bit, the establishment were still patriotic types. They wanted to be at the top of their own society. They wanted to be at the top, but they wanted the country as a whole to succeed so that they could be at the top of a successful country, successful society. And I'm sure the same is true for the United States. But now with that cloven, I can't remember the name of it, the strategy.
Cloward and Piven. Yeah.
Yeah, that strategy. Who are these people who just want to destroy everything? Who are they?
Communists. They're communists.
I suppose they're just communists, but
because if you stir up it's to cause it's to cause a peasant revolution, and if you piss off enough people that they will revolt. That's my opinion of it.
Right.
One time, and I agree. In America, at one time, we did have an aristocracy that cared about the middle class, and in turn cared about the lower class. And because when the middle class is successful, so are they successful. Because most of the innovation and most of the innovation came from the middle class back in the day. You had your Steve Jobs, creating incredible things in a garage, and you had Henry Ford, creating cars and things like that benefited the upper class. But there's been a separation. There's been a cleave to where the upper class elite figured out, well, we can still make money and stay in power regardless of what goes on in the middle class and lower class. In fact, we could do that in spite of them. But we're gonna make sure they have plenty of NFL football, and divisive racial issues and societal issues that they can argue with themselves and beat each other up enough that they'll leave us alone. All the while we're manipulating the stock market. I tell you what, man, we need to get back to the gold standard, and it can be done, but that's another subject.
That is another subject. I'd have to look up. I'd have to.
I'm thinking maybe in the 60s is when it started. I could be wrong. This is a guess.
It could be it could be of November the 24th, 1963. Could have been. That's when it changed, maybe.
maybe.
Perhaps.
Yeah. My mother still told me stories about when we lived right outside of Dallas.
Right.
That was before I was a few years before I was born, but my mother and father were in Texas,
Yeah.
living in
I
Fort Worth.
wasn't accusing you, by the way. I was.
Good. Let's get that straight right now. But yeah, no, yeah, I'm a firm believer that the CIA did take out Kennedy. The
Yeah, I
CIA,
thought that
or
for a long
it
time.
might not have been the CIA, it might have been the NSA, could have been, God knows who it was, but somebody did not want Kennedy to continue being president.
I think I saw a picture. I mean, of course, you don't like everything else. You don't know. I think I saw a photograph of a bloke who looked suspiciously like George Bush Sr. standing outside the book depository.
Oh God, wouldn't surprise me at all, man.
Yeah, I mean, but who knows? I mean, it could have been a doctor photograph. Who knows? But it's but it's funny because you have with regard to establishments and stuff. I mean, I've often thought, I was trying to think what you need in the society, and I think what you need is you need a patrician upper class, the people who kind of they own lots of assets. They own, like in England, it was the big houses, the land. They look after that. They profit from it, but also in at their best, which probably wasn't very often, and it's all very Downton Abbey about this, but they look after this stuff, and then they pass it down. And then what you need below that is you need an affluent middle class who keep the economy churning over by buying cars and washing machines and televisions and and then below that you need an aspirational working class that want to get up there. Want to get up there, and they get up there, and more people come underneath them, and
right.
But that stuff has all been subverted by mass immigration and
taxes.
And taxes and manipulating stock market and Federal Reserve and all this shit.
Yeah.
So I mean, I suppose this stuff has been going on for ages, but
okay. And another aspect there too, when you lower the birth rate also, because no longer is there generational wealth. My parents handed me down very little because I don't want to get too personal, but let me go more general. The boomers aren't leaving Gen X and the preceding generations.
We're Gen X, aren't we?
Much of any wealth at all, or real estate or anything like that, as opposed to what they were left. You have the silent generation, the greatest generation, then the boomers. There was some generational wealth that had been built up. None of that is getting handed down. And I'm as guilty as that as possible. I'm as guilty of that also, because the economy and personal choices, I have to take most of the responsibility there. I'm going to be leaving my kids very little, unfortunately. So if there's no stability within the middle class, and really only in the last 5 years have I actually reached the middle class. I'm really pretty much lower middle class if you want to get technical, demographically. But I completely agree. There has to be economic mobility, even to the fact that if you do reach a certain level and a .com bubble or real estate crisis or something, and you crater economically, you can build yourself back up again. But like you said, between the devaluing of the dollar, huge taxes. I'm sure you've already heard that there's lots of millennials and Gen Z that are figuring out real quick what taxes are.
Yeah.
I get paid $100 for this week, and you're going to tax me, and then I'm going to take what little money I have, and I'm going to go buy something, and then you're going to tax me there. And then, and if I sell something, I'm still going to get taxed. I'm going to sell that thing that I bought. I'm going to get taxed again on that.
Yeah.
And then when I die,
you get taxed again.
Get taxed on that again. So, and you're feeding the beast. All that money's going to those in power to continue the cycle of keeping the middle class and the lower class exactly where they are, if not bringing them down. Let's go conspiracy theory, and I think it's more of a conspiracy fact nowadays. That's the global goal. We've talked about many parallels. It's funny how the elites are acting like this in Britain and in France and everywhere around the world. I think that's the whole. They want to bring America down on a level playing field with everybody else. They want
it's
everybody
easier to bring America down than bring everyone else up.
Yeah. Exactly. It's easier to bring one country down than to increase the economy and the well-being and the prosperity of everybody else. McCarthyism has been thrown around for years and years, but people forget that McCarthy actually found communists.
Yeah. He might have
We're
been right.
communists there, but but it's been painted over as, oh, it's evil, and So I think that's the big global Soros, Davos, Klaus Schwab agenda right there. That it's easier to level the playing field than bring everybody else up. So.
Yeah, I mean, as far as taxes, I used to be somebody who was quite sanguine about paying taxes. I used to, I feel quite daft in saying this thing now, but I used to think that it was taxes are what we pay, the price we pay for living in a civilized society.
In a civilization.
Yeah, and and of course I don't feel that at all now, because, in Norway, they get taxed very heavily in Norway. Okay.
Right.
Like well over 50% or something, But if you go to Norway, everything is pristine. And part of the reason for that is it's not because they are such efficient administrators or anything. It's because they had as much North Sea oil as we did, and they only have 5 million people to spread it around. And they put it into this thing called the sovereign wealth fund, and it's just enormous. It's an enormous amount of money that they've saved, and so they get absolute first class services in Norway. But as far as I'm concerned, my taxes pay for illegal immigration. Putting these people up in hotels, and they pay for my own surveillance. ULEZ cameras and automatic number plate recognition cameras, and anything that might be left over gets laundered going to Ukraine and back.
Yeah,
and that's it. That's what our taxes go to. And and people like me are some of the heftiest people who have proportionately get taxed. Because I don't get any benefits at all. I'm sure that I'm probably eligible for some benefits, but I don't take any. Partly because I don't want to, for reasons of principle, and also because I know that it would be just such a compromising thing to do. Because I'd have to start. They'd have to start saying, well, I'd have to start giving up all sorts of information and subjecting myself to all sorts of monitoring in order to take some of their money. I have to admit, I did take money during COVID along with everyone else, partly because I thought I was going to need it. But it's funny because I took about, I don't know, it worked out to be about 6,000 quid or something.
Okay.
And the next tax year, they got absolutely every single penny of that back and more.
Right.
So it would have been if I hadn't taken anything. But
No, I know. In America, there's no incentive to go up and down the class system anymore, because, like I said, I went pretty much from lower class to lower middle class, and 5-10 years ago, I used to call what they euphemistically call a tax refund, right?
Yeah.
Where you paid over the year, you paid too much taxes. So here's a gift from the
here's a
federal
little tiny bit of it back. Yeah,
we're so generous here, and it would amount to maybe $500, maybe $1,000. Ooh, you know.
Yeah.
The second I hit that middle class,
you meant to feel grateful for that.
oh, I know. It's my money. You've stolen too much of my money, in other words. So you're going to give me the remainder. Oh, thank you. But the second I hit middle class, I have owed the federal government every fucking year, which pisses me off to no end. And a few amounts have hurt, and that it pisses me off. I'm the fucking backbone of this country.
Yeah, exactly.
You know?
Yeah.
We make this country run, literally, and I'm paying you idiots, you know. While the second you get into office, you may make 90,000 a year, but by the time you leave office, you're a fucking millionaire.
Yeah.
Duh, I don't want to hear it, you know. I don't want to fucking hear it. So taxation is theft.
Yeah, it is.
It'd be one
I'm
thing,
very much on that page.
It'd be one thing if we could choose where our taxes are going to, you know. It would be something if we knew where our taxes were going. No, we don't. We can't even do that. So
no, they're not going to allow us to.
I remember back in the day during the Tea Party, the height of the Tea Party movement, I was talking to a few of my friends back then, and I'm like, well, we just need to quit paying taxes. We're funding our own demise, right? They're like, oh, no, you have to pay taxes. I'm like, well, even back then I was thinking, well, hold on. My money is going towards, you know, the cops that are pulling us over for no good reason, and corrupt politicians, you know, and middle management.
There's no moral case for paying tax any longer. There's no moral case. There's no moral case for paying tax any longer. Yeah, there might have been once. But there isn't any longer.
Yeah. So even in the middle, in the belly of the beast of the smaller government freedom movement 20 years ago, people still said, "Oh no, we have to pay taxes." What? That makes no sense. No. You know? Well, if you don't pay taxes, then the IRS comes in. Okay, well, let's get rid of the IRS. Oh, well, how are we going to have our roads? And how are we going to, you know, so.
Did America have roads before 1913?
Oh, right. Yeah, no. Yeah, actually, we had roads, and, you know, and railroads and all kinds of amenities that we have today. We've just handed it over to the monopoly that is the federal government, and they you know, they do sweetheart deals with their contractors, and it's messed up top to bottom, man. It really is, you know. And like I said, I'd have no problem if I still would have a problem. I was gonna say if I knew where the money was going. No, screw it. You don't want to. I'm not gonna give you a damn dime. It's only under threat of imprisonment with, you know, proverbial. You know, our IRS has over 60,000 lawyers and a massive SWAT. I want to call it a military unit that is employed by the IRS. The Department of Education has its own SWAT team. Every department has their own little private army.
I'll bet you what else they have. I bet you they all probably all have as well. Is like I heard that the CIA had a financial arm. You know, just they've just got this. They've got their own sort of, you know, people who work in banking and finance.
Oh, doesn't surprise me at all.
You know,
they have their finger in all the.
They had their own drug dealing outfit, didn't they? But you know, so I suppose we shouldn't be too surprised. But it's
right.
But the idea that, you know, a part of the federal government has on its payroll, you know, salaries paid by the taxpayer, have people who are playing the stock market, and also people who are in, you know, and like in the 80s were involved in drug dealing, you know, because they wanted funds that they couldn't be traced,
right?
And the taxpayer funds could be traced, and they didn't want that because they wanted to be able to do whatever they wanted with their money. So
I know, man. And like I said, if even 10% of the general population here in America knew what they were doing, things would change. It goes back to the Boston Tea Party was over a 3% tax on tea.
Mm.
And we were stacking bodies over a 3% tax when the average middle class guy is paying 20, 25, 30% tax on everything, not just tea.
Yeah.
How times have changed.
Yeah, we do have to. I mean, I do think that the only way forward is that we have to start. I mean, it sounds obvious, but it has to reach a critical mass of people who are not going to play the game anymore. For instance, we are staring down the barrel of a new Labour government. Okay, now we had the supposedly right-wing Conservative government, or nothing of the kind, obviously all part of the Uniparty, just like in America. And like I say, they've got an 80-seat majority, and it looks like they're going to get wiped out next night. Not because anybody's gone over to the Labour Party. It's that everybody who voted for the Conservatives are not going to vote for them.
Yeah.
So the Labour Party are going to win massively by default. Now, in a way, that's good, because what it will mean is that the Conservative Party will be destroyed, and they need destroying. Much like probably the Republican Party need destroying in the US. But you can only do one at a time. So the Conservative Party has to go first. Yeah. But what that will mean is that you're going to have a massive majority of Labour Party, and they're going to go bonkers, because we're going to have trans rights, we're going to have open more. They're going to open the borders even more. That, in fact, I was going to say they're actually going to have to. They're going to start going around the world looking for immigrants to bring here. Yeah, and in fact, they've already been doing that. They've been scouring, So I don't know how much worse the Labour Party are going to be than the Conservative Party. But the thing about the Labour Party is, no matter how bad the Conservative Party is, no matter how shit they are, the Labour Party always managed to up their game enough to be even worse than the Conservatives, and that's what's going to happen. So we're going to go for we're going to go for a horrible few years now, because it's going to be horrendous. It really is going to be horrendous.
And you're hoping they get so out of hand that you're hoping that they'll get so out of hand that the general population will push back and wake up
This is what I hope. This is the only hope, really, is that it'll just become so bad that everybody thinks we've got to change the whole system. Everything's got to be changed, because there's no future in what we've got, So I don't know, but anyway, that's what it's. We don't know when our election is going to be yet, because it's normally in May.
Okay.
But because the last one was in December of 2019, we're allowed 5 years before we've got to have one. So it might not be until December. They're suggesting either May or November. So we might have it a similar time as you have, because yours is in November, isn't it? So yeah. So
in fact, I'm really shocked.
I don't know, man. It's interesting. I mean, interesting times. It would probably be a lot better if they were less interesting. But
right. It's a hell of a time we live in, man. Yeah. Can you imagine kids getting born this year, or maybe even last year? They're missing out on all of this from the last 10, especially the last 3 years. Yeah. This is stuff that, if we're allowed, are going to be in the history books that we're going to be talking about.
Yeah, they'll have their own. They'll have their own demographic name, won't they?
Yeah, I think we're going to start over. I think I've already heard tell that the youngest generation, like the 10-year-olds now, are going to be Gen Alpha. So maybe we're just going to go through the Greek alphabet all over again. I don't know.
Yeah, maybe. Yeah. Well, fella, look, we've done nearly 2 hours again, so I suppose we ought to draw it to a close. But like I say, thank you for getting up early in the morning, even that's a lie-in for you. So I do appreciate it. So
not a problem. Appreciate you postponing lunch for me.
yeah, me too. Yeah. So anyway, look, take it easy, mate. You too. And we'll speak again next month.
Sounds good. Sounds real good. Take care.
Okay, mate. Take it easy. Bye.
Bye.